Good morning. You're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. These are the headlines. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy says he's ready to meet Russian President Putin in Istanbul for direct talks. Hamas says the organization is ready to release an Israeli-American hostage. Protests against Islamophobia broke out across France. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he's ready to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Istanbul this Thursday. The invitation follows a renewed diplomatic push and calls for a ceasefire.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he will be in Istanbul on Thursday for direct talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, challenging him to personally attend. It follows encouragement from US President Donald Trump. It's after Putin proposed talks in Turkey during a televised address on Saturday night, but it remains unclear whether he plans to attend in person. Zelenskyy, speaking in his nightly address on Sunday, reiterated Ukraine's support for a ceasefire and called on Russia to provide a clear response.
Starting from tomorrow, we expect a ceasefire. The proposal for this is on the table. A complete and unconditional ceasefire, long enough to provide the necessary foundation for diplomacy, could bring peace much closer.
He added that Ukraine is willing to negotiate in any format and urged Moscow to respond to international calls for de-escalation.
Russia's war will still have to end. The killing must end. Ukrainian forces will be ready to mirror their response with fairness. We are ready for any format.
Zelenskyy said the ball is now in Russia's court and called on Putin to attend the meeting.
I will be in Turkey this Thursday, May the 15th, and I'm expecting Putin in Turkey, personally. I hope this time Putin will not look for reasons why he can't do something. We are ready to talk to end the war, Thursday in Turkey. President Trump supports it. All leaders support it.
Analysts say the proposal marks a significant move by Zelenskyy, especially after days of coordinated calls from European leaders for a 30-day ceasefire. Some observers also view the move as an attempt to show flexibility to key allies, including Washington.
Zelensky's announcement that he's willing to go to Turkey and essentially wait for Vladimir Putin, and his willingness to act boldly in the name of Ukraine's national defense. Zelenskyy is very much trying to put the front foot back on Vladimir Putin. I think he is trying to show to the U.S. that as heterodox as some of Trump's proposals and ideas may be, and as much as he may shoot from the hip on some of this policy making, that he's willing to be a partner who adapts to some of those U.S. demands, recognizing the importance of its support.
As Thursday's proposed meeting draws closer, there has been no official confirmation from the Kremlin on Putin's attendance. The two leaders have not met since 2019, when talks were held in Paris alongside France and Germany.
We heard that even if the meeting were to go ahead, that Vladimir Putin would meaningfully alter his strategy or give up the territory that he is occupying in Ukraine.
The focus now shifts to Istanbul, where the possibility of direct talks remains uncertain amid ongoing diplomatic efforts.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese officials reported progress in trade talks held this weekend in Switzerland. China's Vice Premier He Lifeng called the discussions candid and constructive. This marked the first face-to-face meeting between US and Chinese officials since tariffs on Chinese goods escalated from 20% in 2018 to 145% in January. Both sides expressed optimism about reducing the US trade deficit, though no details were provided. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says Iran has no interest in developing nuclear weapons as indirect talks with the US resumed in Oman.
He stressed Iran's nuclear program is strictly for peaceful purposes such as healthcare and agriculture. Speaking in a cabinet meeting, President Pezeshkian said the latest talks in Muscat were part of Iran's efforts to resolve the nuclear issue through diplomacy. He described the discussions as constructive and reaffirmed Tehran's commitment to peaceful negotiations. Officials say that further negotiations are planned.
A senior Hamas official says Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander will soon be released in Gaza. He is believed to be the last American citizen still held captive by Hamas.
After months of deadlock, Hamas says it's preparing to release Eden Alexander, a 21-year-old Israeli-American soldier held hostage in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. A senior Hamas official confirmed the development to Reuters, describing it as part of broader efforts to reach a ceasefire and ease the humanitarian crisis in the Strip. Alexander, born and raised in New Jersey, is believed to be the last living American hostage held by Hamas.
Eden is a great guy, Jersey boy, all-American kid, great swimmer. Graduated from the high school like everybody else instead of college. Traveled to Israel, served in IDF, and found himself on the wrong spot in the wrong time.
His release is expected as early as Tuesday, according to sources familiar with the negotiations. Efforts to secure his freedom have been led by key mediators, Qatar and Egypt, alongside Turkey. In a statement, Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya said the group is ready to enter intensive negotiations aimed at ending the war and exchanging prisoners. The news comes as US President Donald Trump prepares to visit the Middle East this week. He also made a post on Truth Social, thanking the mediators and calling the release a step taken in good faith toward ending the conflict. The joint statement from Qatar and Egypt welcomed the development, saying it could revive the stalled ceasefire talks that collapsed 2 months ago. They reaffirmed their commitment to pushing for a permanent ceasefire. Meanwhile, conditions in Gaza continue to deteriorate. Since the 2nd of March, Israel has cut off all supplies to the Strip's 2.3 million residents. Food reserves stockpiled during a temporary truce have nearly run out, and the United Nations has warned of imminent famine. Hamas has indicated it is willing to release all remaining hostages as part of a comprehensive agreement that includes a permanent ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Israel, however, insists the war will not end until Hamas is dismantled. Earlier in May, Israel said that its military campaign might expand.
In his first Sunday address since being elected as head of the Catholic Church, Pope Leo XIV delivered a strong appeal for peace, urging world leaders to end ongoing conflicts and prevent further bloodshed.
The newly elected Pope Leo XIV has addressed thousands for the first time at the Vatican, using the occasion to urge global leaders to pursue peace and resolve ongoing conflicts. Speaking from St. Peter's Basilica to a crowd of 100,000, Pope Leo XIV echoed his predecessor, Pope Francis's peace appeals. Pope Leo voiced concern over Gaza, calling for a ceasefire and hostage release, and urged renewed efforts for lasting peace in Ukraine.
I carry in my heart the sufferings of the beloved Ukrainian people. Let every effort be made to achieve, as soon as possible, an authentic, just and lasting peace. May all prisoners be freed, and may children return to their families.
The Pope welcomed the India-Pakistan ceasefire and hoped for lasting peace.
I have instead welcomed with satisfaction the announcement of the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and I hope that through upcoming negotiations, a lasting agreement can soon be reached.
Pope Leo, elected last Thursday following a 2-day conclave after the passing of Pope Francis, thanked the crowd for their support. His formal inauguration is scheduled for the 18th of May in St. Peter's Square.
Protests broke out across France on Sunday following the fatal stabbing of a young Muslim man in a mosque. Demonstrators demanded justice and denounced the rise of Islamophobia in politics and media.
Hundreds of protesters marched through Paris and other major French cities on Sunday, condemning rising Islamophobia. They're demanding justice for Abu Bakr Sisa, a young 22-year-old Muslim man who was fatally stabbed at a mosque last month. Rallies took place in Paris, Marseille, Lyon and other cities, saying it's in response to growing anti-Muslim sentiment in French politics and the media. In Paris, the march began at Place de la Bastille and ended at Place de la Nation, with chants of "Stop Islamophobia" and "Justice for Abu Bakr" echoing through the streets. Demonstrators also condemned Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau's immigration and security policies. The protesters were holding signs reading "Islamophobia kills." The state and media contribute to it. "Let's resist," and "Retailleau, Abu Bakr's blood is on your hands."
The fourth Copenhagen Climate Ministerial took place on the 7th and 8th of May, serving as a major milestone in the global push toward COP30 in Brazil. Ministers and leaders from around the world gathered to discuss national climate commitments, just transition pathways, adaptation and resilience, and climate finance through the Baku-Belém roadmap. A News covered the event, featuring key interviews and insights from high-level participants involved in shaping the global climate agenda.
The Copenhagen Climate Ministerial marked a pivotal moment in the global effort toward the 2025 United Nations Climate Change Conference to be hosted in Belém, Brazil. Ministers and government leaders from 40 countries gathered in Copenhagen to discuss critical climate issues such as national climate commitments, just transition pathways, adaptation, resilience, and climate finance. The Baku to Belém roadmap emerged as a key framework for guiding the dialogue and collaboration in the lead-up to COP30. CEO of the 30th Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC, Anna Tony said the meeting was a key step toward COP30. She noted that 21 countries have submitted their climate plans, while others aim to finish by September, highlighting the Amazon's tipping point and last year's passing of the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. She stressed the need for urgent global cooperation.
We are learning both from Baku, with our colleagues from Azerbaijan, Mr. Babayev. Obviously, we learn also through the Troika from COP28. But for Brazil, this is a really important COP. We should remember that the Climate Convention was born in Brazil in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. So now we're going around and we will have again COP30 in Belém. So it goes through the full cycle now that we are now implementing the Paris Agreement. It's the first time that we will have a COP after, unfortunately, that we passed 1.5 degrees last year. That was the case. And in the Amazon, that is a tipping point. So
despite challenges, including the withdrawal of one country from the Paris Agreement, she emphasized that 197 nations remain committed to collective climate action. Damilola Ogunbiyi, CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Sustainable Energy for All, spoke about the importance of continuity in climate action. She highlighted the ongoing relationship between the COP30 and COP29 presidencies, pointing to the Baku to Belém roadmap as a key tool for building on previous commitments. She also called for urgent action, especially given the global challenges facing both developed and developing nations.
In COP29, we had some agreements, basically agreed on the Paris Agreement we'd been waiting for years. So taking that momentum in a time where, frankly, a lot is happening, and seeing that there's still two countries and the Troika with the UAE, who is here as well, so committed, focusing going on to a large developing country as well. As I am from an African country, it is really great to see that we're not just talking about the voices of a global north, we're also really focused on the developing and the emerging economies.
Dr. Dion Travers-George, Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment of South Africa, highlighted South Africa's key role in climate discussions, noting that COP29 showed global commitment to climate action despite geopolitical challenges.
I think if you roll back to before we had, well, it was pre-COP, before COP29, and then at COP, there was a narrative forming that, well, you know, we're not sure what the United States is going to do. That was before the election. And what does that then mean? That COP29 will not be successful because the USA is not present. It was not so. In fact, the show carried on going. And I think what that demonstrated is that the mainstream of the world has in fact moved in a particular direction. We've also seen some elections, for example, in Canada and Australia, and it seems that I would like to maybe refer to it as the more sensible approach that you will find is that these are things that the problems facing the world, we need to work together. Multilateralism is very much alive, and we carry on going. And we saw the start of that at COP29, and I think that will carry on going. So yes, absolutely, it will get noisy, and it will get a lot noisier. But I think also, very importantly, what we're learning.
He also stated that Africa is moving in the right direction with clear objectives and agreed with the COP29 president to ignore distractions and stay focused. Turkish Deputy Minister of Environment Fatma Varank stressed that climate finance is the biggest obstacle to fast climate action. She explained that developed countries need funds to upgrade their industries, while developing nations need support to access renewable energy and digital technologies for their growing energy needs.
Developed countries need funds to transform their existing systems, while developing countries need access to renewable energy sources to meet growing energy demands. There is also a need for digitalization to support this technological shift. However, many countries lack the capacity to achieve this on their own. One of the biggest barriers remains the lack of financial support. Developed nations must transfer their capacity to developing or least developed countries. A major decision on climate finance was made at last year's climate summit in Azerbaijan. A global target was set to mobilize $1.3 trillion annually, with $300 billion of that allocated over the next decade to support developing nations. The focus over the past year has been on how to formalize this commitment, particularly through the Baku to Belém roadmap. We hope to see concrete results at COP30.
The outcomes of the Copenhagen Climate Ministerial reinforce the critical need for urgent collective action as the world moves toward COP30 in Belém, Brazil.
Turkey says it's ready to support peace efforts between Azerbaijan and Armenia. President Erdogan's advisor says Ankara is willing to do its part. In an interview with CNN Turk, Akif Çağatay Kılıç, the Turkish president's advisor on foreign policy and security, said Turkey is ready to do its part in helping finalize a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia. He stressed that the final decision lies with the two countries, but added that Turkey supports the process in hopes of a stable and peaceful future for the region. There are several tracks in the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia, Azerbaijan's Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov told journalists. Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov noted that the text of the peace agreement was finalized in March and emphasized that Azerbaijan has legitimate expectations from Armenia. These include the removal of territorial claims against Azerbaijan from the Armenian constitution and the formal dissolution of the Minsk group, which is no longer needed following the resolution of the conflict. He added that Azerbaijan is closely monitoring developments and that contacts are ongoing. Tbilisi will host the 5th Silk Road Forum on the 22nd and 23rd of October, bringing together around 60 representatives from international organisations and governments. The forum aims to strengthen cooperation in international and regional trade, serving as a platform for dialogue among Silk Road Initiative countries, global institutions and the private sector. The event will feature thematic panels on transport, trade, tourism, energy and IT. It will run alongside the FinTech Summit, with Georgia's Ministry of Economy allocating over 1.9 million lari for both events. These are the updates for the hour. Keep watching A News for more updates throughout the day.